Welcome to the Rebel to Succeed podcast. It's your boy Anthony Williams, the founder of rebeltosucceed.com. The purpose of this podcast is to share tips, advice, and strategies to help you improve in all areas of your life. My mission is to make a positive difference in your life to help you live your best life. Now let's get it. What up, Rebels? It's your boy Ian from Rebel to Succeed coming at you with another podcast episode. So today in this podcast episode, I'm going to be sharing one of the lectures from a very famous prosperity teacher by the name of Catherine Ponder. Or I want to share this lecture by her on prosperity to help you guys achieve more prosperity in your life. So check out this clip by Catherine Ponder.
Now, friends, during this first segment, we're going to be thinking about opening our minds to prosperity. Some of you know the story of how these seminars began, but I'd like to review the experience that we've had in these with you. In 1958, one of the most severe recessions since World War II hit this country. And I was living in Birmingham, Alabama at the time. And of course, that area was hard hit by the recession because it was an industrial city and it was dependent upon its steel mills, which had been hard hit by the recession. And so thousands of people were out of work and were jobless in that area as they were all over the country. And finally, Birmingham was declared a disaster area. Federal aid had been provided for the people in the bread lines. Everyone was talking hard times and lack. Everyone was in a discouraged, depressed state of mind. And it was at this point that I was asked to teach a prosperity class by a group of business and professional people in the city. Now, I had been researching out the laws of prosperity for a long time. Even then, I'd been trying to figure out just what they were. And I'm sure that I had the experience that many of you have had. I searched the bookshelves trying to find one book that would give me the simple 1, 2, 3 steps to prosperity. And I could not find these ideas in any one book. I found many marvelous ideas in many books. Nevertheless, we began to meet once a week to study the subject of prosperity together and to develop the laws of prosperity. Now, our basic idea and the basic theme of that prosperity class was this: turn the great energy of your thinking upon ideas of plenty, and you will have plenty, regardless of what people about you are saying or doing. It's a great success philosophy in this one statement. Turn the great energy of your thinking upon ideas of plenty, and you will have plenty, regardless of what people about you are doing or saying. And so we began to do this in that class, and we were amazed how quickly it worked. Within 1 week from the time that people in that class began to turn the great energy of their thinking upon ideas of plenty, they got results. Now, in this book, The Dynamic Laws of Prosperity, we've talked about all of the things that happened in that class. 2 secretaries received raises in pay the first week. A stockbroker had had a very low income because, of course, the market was low. Right away, a client that he had not seen in several years walked into his office, handed him a check for $200,000 to be invested. Now, that stockbroker's income the first month after we started that prosperity class there was 4 times what it had been in the past. Several businessmen began to collect money that was owed them right in the midst of the recession. A lawyer's clients began to pay him. One saleswoman was employed by a store that had 100 employees. They had all been hard hit by the recession. After she began attending that prosperity class, she was the only employee in that store to receive a commission check at the end of the month because she was the only one that had made enough sales. A construction engineer went from $1.5 million construction job that he was on in Alabama to a $15.5 million construction job in the Midwest before the end of the class was over. This was a 12-week class. A housewife won an all-expense-paid trip abroad. One couple in the class received an unexpected inheritance running into thousands of dollars. One man's heart condition disappeared. A widow of 20 years remarried happily. Several marriages were saved. One couple that had been divorced even remarried again. At least 2 people became millionaires as a result of that class. Now, we found that all kinds of things happened. There was increased health, there was increased wealth, there was increased happiness, there was increased peace of mind. The thing I noticed the most was that whereas the people had been depressed and discouraged at the beginning of that class, they seemed to blossom forth with a new look as the class progressed. They gained a new lease on life. It was an amazing thing to watch. The results of that class were so gratifying that the people in it asked me to write a book on prosperity. And I hesitated because at that time I'd written articles, but I had no experience in writing books. And I did not feel that I had the time either. But when I hesitated, a businessman in the class suggested that he begin meeting with me every day and that we meditate upon these ideas together, talk about them, and just let them expand. And so as we began to meet every day and meditate upon these ideas of prosperity, the whole format for this book developed to me in meditation and just in thinking about it. Now, a stockbroker in the class named this book The Dynamic Laws of Prosperity. And then it was a public relations man in that class who found the literary agent who found the publisher for the book. Now, not only was I surprised how fast the people in that prosperity class got results, but I was also startled by what happened to the people who worked closely with me while I was writing the book later. And some of you know this story because I've talked about it in some of my books. I employed a secretary who worked with me on the outline in the first half of this book. She was typing it. And when she had finished one half of the book, she came into my office one day and she said, "I'm resigning." And I said, "Well, what's wrong?" And she said, "Nothing's wrong. That's the reason I'm resigning. I don't need this job anymore. I've been using the ideas in this book and they've worked." And what had happened, her husband, her husband was a salesman and his sales had been low as a result of the recession. And so she had taken the job to get extra things that they wanted, like a second car and things for their home and so on. And after she started typing the manuscript on Dynamic Laws of Prosperity, she began to rather quietly and secretly use the ideas. And all of a sudden, her husband's income began to go up. He began to sell, and his income began to go up. And then she had several gifts come to her, and in various ways, money began to come, and suddenly she just didn't need the job anymore. They got the second car and so on. And so she resigned. And so very innocently then I employed a second secretary to help me work on the last half of this book. And she began to type it as I was working on it chapter by chapter over a period of weeks. And I vow to you, before she finished typing the last half of the book, she came into my office one day, and it was like a broken record. She said, "I'm resigning." And I said, "Well, what's wrong?" And she said, "Well, nothing's wrong." She said, "I've been using the ideas in that manuscript, and they've worked so well that I don't need this job anymore." And what had happened was her husband had been a very fine engineer in the aircraft business, and he had gotten laid off because of termination of government contracts as a result of the recession. And so she had taken this job as a stopgap until her husband could find work again. And so as she was working with the manuscript, she began to quietly use the ideas, and her husband went out and got the best job of his life in the space program, and they left the state before the manuscript was finished. Now, I had a housekeeper at home, and I was trying not to talk about the book to anyone as I was developing the material, because, you know, that's an old secret idea about success, to kind of keep quiet about it until it's worked out. And so I thought it was safe to talk to my housekeeper, though, about it. She had not attended the prosperity class. She had not seen the manuscript or any of the ideas in the book. And so I was describing these laws of prosperity to her as we were developing the manuscript chapter by chapter. And one day, I vow to you, before I had finished the book, she came in to me and she said, you know, learning about the laws of prosperity has given me the courage to do something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. She says, I don't really want to be a housekeeper. I really want to be a dressmaker. So I've decided to resign as your housekeeper. Now, will you employ me as your dressmaker? And so that lady became a dressmaker. She still is a very fine dressmaker in Alabama. All right. I lost 2 secretaries and a housekeeper before we could get the book finished and to the publisher. And then on the day that the book was finally published by Prentice Hall, I had a note from my editor telling me how the ideas had worked for him in a rather nice way as soon as the book came off the press. He said, an amusing thing happened a few minutes ago after I received the first copy of the Dynamic Laws of Prosperity from the printer. While I was reading through the first few pages of the book, one of the other editors here at Prentice Hall came into my office and handed me some money. I looked at him in surprise, and he reminded me that one day when he had forgotten his wallet, I had loaned him lunch money. He was now repaying it. I had completely forgotten the incident. My editor said, how's that for fast action with the dynamic laws of prosperity? And so it was an interesting thing to watch these ideas work. First, for people who were very depressed and discouraged in a prosperity class during the recession, and then later for people all around who seemed to touch or have contact with the manuscript in any way. And so you say, well, what are the dynamic laws of prosperity? Well, I like what the stockbroker said when he explained to me why he felt we should name the book in this way. He said, you know, the word dynamic has the same root as the word dynamite. That which is dynamic is forceful. It often leads to change. And then he said, you know, a law is a rule of action that works if you work it. Prosperity includes peace, health, and plenty. And so the dynamic laws of prosperity are those inner and outer rules of action which work for us as we work them. And they can literally blast us out of limitation, you see, to bring increased peace, health, and abundance into our world. Now, in the publicity for this prosperity seminar, we have said that most success courses cover only 1/4 of the success philosophy that we talk about in this course, and that's true. Now, if you'd like to take from your kits the summary sheet, I'll show you what I mean. Now, tonight, during this first segment, we're thinking about opening our minds to prosperity. And actually, the material covered here would be what we would call the psychological laws of prosperity. Opening our minds to prosperity would have to do with the psychological laws of prosperity. That is the necessity for overcoming any sense of guilt about wanting to be prosperous or successful. Now, second, there are the emotional laws of prosperity. I think of those as number two, the cleansing laws of prosperity, which we will talk about after our coffee break tonight, of how we must cleanse our mind, our emotions, our lives to make room for increased good. Third, there are the mental laws of prosperity, and you'll find them on the inside page. We call them the creative laws. They're the mental laws of prosperity. We'll talk about these tomorrow night. You must get definite in your thoughts, in your words, and your actions about prosperity if you want prosperity to get definite about you. And we'll talk about how to do that tomorrow night. And then fourth, there are what I like to think of as the advanced laws of prosperity. And both ancient seers and modern millionaires have used these advanced laws of prosperity. The word advance would mean to accelerate, to step up, to produce a quicker result. These are what I like to think of as the spiritual laws of prosperity. They give us a feeling of stability and security. They make our success permanent and enduring. We'll talk about those Wednesday night. Now, friends, there are many success courses on the market today, and they're all good. And there are many books on the subject, and they're all good. Because anything that opens our mind and expands our thinking is going to expand our world. But most of the success courses have to do with section number 3, the creative laws of prosperity. Most of them talk about the mental and the little mental steps that you can take. Very few of them even mention this idea of opening your mind to the subject, of overcoming any psychological block on the subject. Most of them do not talk about number 2, the cleansing laws of prosperity. And most of them do not discuss the advanced laws of prosperity, the spiritual or the advanced laws of prosperity. Now, friends, let's think very briefly first about opening our minds to the subject, the psychological law of prosperity. Many people have not prospered because they have not opened their minds to the subject. Or they've prospered to a degree and haven't gotten any further because they haven't opened their minds to the subject in an expanded way. We must become friendly to the idea of prosperity if we want prosperity to become friendly to us. Now, the first thing that I discovered in that first prosperity class was that even though the people in that class desperately wanted to be prospered during that recession, many of them still had that old erroneous idea that it was sinful to prosper. They felt guilty about coming to a prosperity class. And there is nothing unusual about this. Those of you who have followed the radio and television interviews that have been done last week and today even, know that in almost every instance the television interviewer has brought up this subject of is it all right to be prosperous, and is it all right to want to be prosperous. And so many people have the old erroneous idea that it is sinful to prosper. They have felt guilty about wanting to be prosperous. There's nothing unusual about this. Many people have been taught in the past that poverty was a virtue and that prosperous people should probably be viewed with suspicion. Yet we find that poverty causes most of the problems in the world today. Now our national leaders are certainly bringing this to our attention. We're becoming aware of it at home and abroad. War, crime, disease, juvenile delinquency, illiteracy, even communism have a poverty basis. It has been estimated that 9/10 of mankind's problems are caused by poverty or as a result of poverty. Now, ministers in the past have been guilty of telling people that poverty was a virtue. But in this enlightened age, they are no longer saying this. because they realize that it is not true. Dr. Billy Graham, in one of his famous crusades recently, said that 10,000 people a day die from starvation. A spokesman for the Roman Catholic Church recently said, the central problem of our age is world poverty. Some time ago, when 8,000 ministers of the Southern Baptist Church met in Dallas for a convention, one of their spokesmen at that convention, who gave a keynote address, told those 8,000 Baptist ministers that it was time they stopped preaching so much about the sins of drinking and smoking and gambling and so on, and that it was time they spent more of their time trying to resolve the conflicts of human relations, of educational problems, and of solving the problem of poverty among their members. Now, Time magazine was so impressed with this idea that they reported in full this man's text at that particular convention. One famous success writer predicted 30 years ago that the very thing that is happening now would happen. He predicted 30 years ago that the religious leaders of the future would be forced to help their followers solve their economic and personal problems of the present, and that the religious leaders of the future would spend less time on the dead past or on the unborn future. Now, these predictions are now coming true. Our religious leaders are now realizing that it's spiritually right instead of spiritually wrong for man to prosper. I have had the good pleasure of hearing from many in all phases, Protestant, Catholic, and so on, in this country and even abroad, many ministers who are now teaching these ideas and realize the truth of them. Actually, there's nothing new about this idea. A century ago, a Baptist minister whom many of you know about, named Dr. Russell Conwell, became very famous because of one lecture that he gave all over the United States. Dr. Conwell made somewhere between $8 million and $12 million as he traveled about over a 50-year period giving that one lecture. He used his lecture proceeds to found Temple University in Philadelphia. Those of you who have studied his famous Acres of Diamonds lecture realize that and are aware of the fact that it was a prosperity lecture in which he tried to break down his listeners' sense of guilt about wanting to prosper. He said in his famous Acres of Diamonds lecture, I say you ought to be rich. You have no right to be poor. To live and not be rich is a misfortune, and it is doubly a misfortune because you could have been rich just as well as being poor. Now, that was rather strong language for a Baptist minister 100 years ago, but people loved it because they intuitively knew that it was true. Now, as we use the laws of prosperity, we can do so knowing that we're not trying to make the creator of the universe give us anything. We're not trying to force our good in any way. Instead, we're only trying to open our minds to receive the universal abundance that is our heritage and that has been our heritage from the very beginning. The story of creation is a marvelous prosperity story, and I've talked about it in this book, Prosperity Secret of the Ages. In the very beginning, the Creator provided a lavish universe, which is described in Genesis 1. He then placed man in that lavish universe and gave him dominion over it. Man misused his power of choice and did not remain in that state of abundance. But as we redirect our attention, then we are able to open our mind to that realm of universal abundance again. We're able to claim it again. Now, in this book, Prosperity Secret of the Ages, we've talked about the Bible's first four millionaires, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, and how they literally used these laws of prosperity. And sometimes this is a startling idea to people that there are millionaires in the Bible. when I first mentioned right here in Texas that Abraham, for instance, was a millionaire, one unbelieving Texan in my audience said to me afterwards, rather skeptically, he said, well, if Abraham was a millionaire, how many oil wells did he have? And with a prayer in my heart, I said, I don't know, but I'll find out. And so I went to the book of Genesis and researched all of the passages describing Abraham's wealth, and they describe his wealth in rather literal terms. But I couldn't find a single oil well for Abraham. And I thought, this will never do. So I searched those passages very carefully again, and one passage stood out like a neon sign in the 13th chapter of Genesis. It said, Abraham was rich in silver, gold, and cattle. And so when I told that Texan that Abraham was a rich cattleman and showed him the scripture in the book of Genesis, he got so excited that he passed around the word that Abraham was not only a millionaire, but that he was a Texas millionaire. And he even claimed that Abraham's cattle were probably longhorn steer from Texas. Now, people have often felt guilty about wanting to be prospered because of some of the passages in the Scriptures. For instance, people often bring up the passages of Jesus when he talked about how hard it is for the rich man to enter the kingdom. Of course, we know that he was speaking of those people who have a material wealth only, whose wealth rules them. They are possessed by their possessions rather than being in control of them. The inner laws of prosperity help us to gain a freedom from possessions, to know how to manifest them as we need them, but how to release them too when they have served their purpose, to be in control of our wealth rather than letting it control us. And there's quite a difference. Now, you can open your mind to prosperity by realizing the true definition of the word. You're prosperous to the degree that you are experiencing peace, health, and plenty in your world. Often we have found that people get results within 24 hours of their first prosperity class when they realize this, that prosperity includes peace of mind, health, as well as plenty. One of the stories I like to tell is about the young musician out in California who attended a prosperity seminar like this at a time when he needed a job. He'd been out of work for some time. And right away, he got ideas from the class about what to do and got a very fine job. But later he wrote to me and he said, I had a surprise. He said, when I took that prosperity seminar, I was thinking about literal financial increase, and I needed it, and I got it. He said, but I was also estranged from my wife, and we had a divorce suit pending. And he said, as I began to use these inner laws, something happened and in our relationship, and we were reconciliated. We never did get the divorce. We were reconciliated, and we're happier than ever. Now, that happened a number of years ago. Those people are still happily married because I still hear from them every Christmas. And so, prosperity includes peace of mind. It also includes health. Sometimes the first thing that happens to people at a prosperity seminar is they'll have what we call a healing, a physical healing. We had an instance one time of a lady who her husband drove her about 75 miles to a prosperity lecture. We didn't talk about prosperity as health in that lecture. We talked about prosperity as literal financial increase. Nevertheless, on the way home that night from that lecture, that lady realized that she was free of pain for the first time in 12 years. She had had a chronic condition, and drug would alleviate the pain, but when the drug wore off, the pain came back, and her doctor had said there was nothing he could do except keep her pain-free with drug. Nevertheless, something happened to her in that prosperity lecture, and she became so uplifted and so excited about these ideas that pain left, and it never came back. That's been about 10 years ago. Now, the second thing that happened was that her husband went into business for himself and became very successful. But the first result they got from a prosperity class was a literal health one. Now, even though we know that prosperity includes peace and health, it also includes definite financial increase. Sometimes people say, well, since prosperity includes peace and health, prosperity is more than just money. And this is true, but what's wrong with prosperity is money. I like what the comic postcard showed with the rich man and the poor man having a conversation, and they both agreed. One said to the other, rich or poor, it's good to have money. And certainly in this age, this is a money world and a money consciousness. So prosperity includes definite financial increase. I think it was the late George Bernard Shaw who said lack of money is really the root of all evil. In any event, whatever we need next most in our lives begins to come to us as we open our minds to these expanded ideas. And so, friends, we need never feel guilty about wanting to be prosperous or about wanting to become more prosperous. This is our heritage. I like the story a man told me one time. He said that even as a child, he began to say to himself, I am a child of the universe. I am a child of fortune. And he had come from a rather poor family. But he became a very wealthy man over the years. He attracted a lot of wealth to him, and he did it in a very easy way. It wasn't in a hard or hard-pressed way. And he said that over the years he continued to say this, I am a child of the universe. I am a child of fortune. And so this is the truth about us too. We need never feel guilty about wanting to prosper. This is our heritage because we are children of the universe, a rich universe. We are a child of fortune. A friend told me recently that she had been born into wealth and that later she had established 2 very successful businesses, but then later gave them up because she had felt guilty about being so prosperous. And she said that guilt had led her into severe financial limitation. She's now rising out of it because she knows the prosperous truth, that she is a child of the universe, a lavish universe. She's a child of fortune. And so she no longer feels guilty about wanting to succeed in life. And this time she is succeeding and will do so on a sound basis. A businesswoman in California one time said that after she opened her mind to prosperity, that she went into business on a shoestring. She had hoped to make $4,000 to $5,000 the first year. Instead, she made $4,000 to $5,000 right away in just a month or so. She made $30,000 the first year and $50,000 the second. She said that her greatest problem had been not to let people make her feel guilty about her prosperity and success. And then a waitress said that she never prospered until she learned that it was right for her to. She worked very hard but never prospered until she learned this idea that she was a child of the universe, she was a child of fortune, that she should open her mind to prosperity, she should claim it. It was her right. And so, friends, before we take our coffee break, let's declare a couple of statements for ourselves. I am a child of the universe. I am a child of fortune. Now, this is the truth about you. I am a child of the universe. I am a child of fortune. Together, I am a child of the universe. I am a child of fortune. Good. And then, in tune with what we have just said, I now open my mind to prosperity. Together, I now open my mind to prosperity. And as we think about these next 3 nights together, I turn the great energy of my thinking upon ideas of plenty. I turn the great energy of my thinking upon ideas of plenty. Together, I turn the great energy of my thinking upon ideas of plenty. I dare to prosper. Together, I dare to prosper.
So that was a clip by Catherine Ponder. Very, very inspirational. She likes to talk about prosperity. She likes to talk about abundance and the law of attraction. So hopefully you guys found some type of value in her clip. She's a very famous prosperity teacher. I encourage you guys to continue to listen to her. Keep listening to her messages. I will be sharing more messages by her. This is a very long clip, but I believe it's a clip that you guys will be able to find some value in if you're trying to continue to adapt the prosperity mindset and the abundance mindset. So hopefully you guys find value in this clip. If so, I invite you guys to leave a review. Let me know what you guys thought about this podcast episode. Go check out the website rebeltosucceed.com. And last but not least, be a rebel. Reach everybody by exercising love. And this your boy Ian from Rebel to Succeed, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode. I want to thank you for joining me today and listening to this podcast. If you found this episode helpful or valuable in any way, then I encourage you to leave an honest review and subscribe to the Rebel to Succeed podcast for future episodes. To receive more content and value, make sure to visit the Rebel to Succeed website at www.rebeltosucceed.com. And finally, always remember that to succeed in life, you have to reach everyone by exercising love. So make sure to show somebody some love today. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you next time.